Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Geopolitics with Ghosts. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media. It is January 6th, 2026, Friday, and we have a slam-packed show today for you, as we always do. Apologies for the slow start. Just wanted to make sure I had everything prepared. We have, I did finally get that Petro press conference translated. And then after I did, Forbes came out with a translation, like a English overdub version. So anyway, I was able to read through the whole thing. It's a great press conference. A lot of signal in there. I want to start by playing a few minutes of it. And then we're going to look at a few articles that are connected to it. Because I think things are starting to happen kind of quickly here. How's the chat doing? Let me get everyone on screen. I'll bring the chat on. And then let me pull up the video. Yeah, it was like the best version I could find to actually get the transcript was like a 2-hour version, where the first hour is just like an empty press conference with timestamps, and then this version is like the 50-minute version that actually has English overdubs. So I had to like figure out the timestamps. That was kind of a pain, but anyway, I think I have it at the right spot, roughly the right spot. I might have to scrub it a little bit to get here. So this is from February 3rd, 2026. This is from 3 days ago. Petro met with Trump and then gave a press conference directly after. I think this is at Georgetown. But let's listen to this part. Let me make sure I have it at playback at 100. Yeah, at one speed. One speed, not at 1.25. And then make sure it's on screen. There we go. All right, let's roll.
Them together.
We
captured a submarine near the Azores.
Here we go.
Drug
Let me back up a little bit.
in the different areas that you're familiar with as a Colombian journalist. That's the second. I said when I got to the presidency, and now $1.5 billion go back and forth, and it could be much more.
Okay, so the comment he's making right here is he's talking about how when he first became president, he opened up the borders, he got trade going, he tried to stimulate the economy. That's kind of what we're moving out of, and then we're moving into comments on a drug bust.
With no solutions for everyone together.
I really wish they had turned down the original audio and then done the overdubs, but I'm being a little picky now.
Por eso lo primero que hice cuando llegué a la presidencia fue abrir la frontera. Hoy $1.500 millones cruzan y puede ser mucho más. Y lo que cruza es fundamentalmente comida. En cambio, lo que cuando se cerró la frontera, lo que más se comerció entre los dos países fue cocaína. Es irracional lo que se hizo.
So what was done was irrational.
El trabajo sobre ya el narcotráfico que hace usted una parte de su pregunta.
So it's hard to follow what he was just saying there because we kind of jumped in the middle. But what he said is, prior to me coming in, when there wasn't really a lot of trade happening because we had the borders closed, is what he called it. I think he's referring to like trade barriers. But he's saying that the number one trade item between the United States and Colombia, or really just Colombia in general, was cocaine. He's like, that's the number one thing we were exporting. And so he opened it up. And so now they're doing 1.5 billion in trade. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point. He says, if you don't legalize trade, allow illegal trade to happen because of sanctions or whatever, you're going to get black market trade, which is drugs.
On drug trafficking.
Volví a repetir lo mismo. Hay que ir sobre los capos.
The same thing. You need to go after the kingpins.
En Estados Unidos hay una creencia,
there's a belief.
Incluso penetra cuerpos de inteligencia y la política.
It even penetrates
igual
the
en Colombia,
intelligence bodies and the political
que los
circles in
capos
Colombia as
son los
well.
que andan de uniforme y fusil en
The
Colombia.
kingpins are those who have uniforms and rifles in
Con los
Colombia.
diferentes alias que
With
tú como periodista colombiano
in the
conoces.
different
I know some people are saying that it's hard to hear. I'm going to read what he says after he says it. I have the transcript. I'll pull the transcript up. Let's just listen to the audio first, then we'll go through the transcript.
areas that you're familiar with as a Colombian
Esa es la
journalist.
segunda línea.
That's the second
La
tier.
tercera.
The third tier,
La primera línea
The
del narcotráfico
top
no
tier
es la que te imaginas.
the drug traffickers, isn't what you
La
might
primera
imagine.
línea del narcotráfico
The
vive en
first
Dubái,
tier
en
of
Madrid,
drug
en
trafficking, they
Miami.
live in Dubai, in Madrid,
Lo
in
conocen
Miami.
las agencias de los Estados
The
Unidos. Le
U.S.
pasé sus
intelligence
nombres al
agencies
presidente
know
Trump,
that.
sus lazos
They pass
más
on
allá
the
de
names to
sí
President Trump,
mismos.
the interconnections among them.
Son los capos de capos.
They are the
Sus
top
capitales están
drug
fuera de
dens.
Colombia.
Their assets
Y
are
hay que
outside of Colombia.
perseguirlos conjuntamente
They
a
have to
través de
be
una articulación de inteligencias
gone after through
de muchos sectores del mundo y está
intelligence
propuesto y
of
se está
many, from
haciendo.
many sections of the world. That's been
Por
proposed and
eso
it's being done.
hace domingo,
That is
pasó,
why last Sunday,
hace sino 2 días,
just 2 days ago,
nosotros,
we,
con inteligencia naval colombiana,
with Colombian naval
con
intelligence,
inteligencia la DEA,
with DEA
articulándolas,
intelligence, bringing them together,
capturamos un
we
submarino
captured
cerca de
a
las Azores
submarine near the Azores
con 10 toneladas de
that had
cocaína
10
dentro.
tons of cocaine.
No murió nadie. Su dueño, conozco su nombre en
owner.
este momento y estoy esperando que lo capturen. Y no
To
está en
arrest
territorio
him.
colombiano.
He's not in Colombian territory.
Y así, con un barco de 2 toneladas, también el día sábado.
On Saturday, similarly, we
Es decir, que apenas en 2
seized a
días,
ship
3,
with 2 tons.
casi que
So
hemos
in just 2
capturado,
or 3 days,
incautado
we have captured, we
15
have
toneladas de
seized
cocaína.
12
Sin muertos.
or 13 tons of
Pero en la
cocaine
frontera
with
con
no one
Ecuador
killed. But at the border with Ecuador,
hay decenas.
there are dozens of.
Okay, so let me just run through what he just said because I know it's a little hard to hear. Forbes did not do a good job of doing the overdub. There's been almost zero media coverage on this, but I did find a few articles. Okay, so let me pull up. Okay. So right here, he says, okay, so he says, when he's talking about Trump, yes, I told him it's between dignitaries and one cannot act under blackmail. Let me see. Thank you, Mr. President. This is somebody asking a question. It's a question from Carlos Ruiz of RTVC. Next, Karen DeYoung from the Washington Post. I think this is Karen DeYoung asking the question. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I understand perfectly that you did not come to do any personal lobbying, but the fact that you leave this meeting with President Trump optimistic and positive Do you think President Trump has changed his opinion about you to the point that, for example, he would take you off the Clinton list, the OFAC list, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control? He said, I did not ask that. You know my life, and you know that for a good part of my youth, I did not need banks or checkbooks. That does not worry me much. He's talking about, bank accounts being frozen, assets being frozen, that sort of thing, financial assets. Yes, I told him that it's between dignitaries and one cannot act under blackmail. Quote, do this or else this will happen, end quote. No, as we say, not even joking. We do not act under blackmail. And the photos, I think, and the atmosphere of the meeting show a meeting between you and you, between equals who think differently. Yes, with different levels of power, obviously, but capable of finding common paths. Not personal ones. Neither did he talk to me about his businesses, nor about mine, which I don't have. But I did invite him to Cartagena. And I told him it is a very cool and beautiful place to be and to live. But regarding what you say, no, we did not talk about that. The personal consequences are logical. I did not get myself elected to see if I would do better or worse as an individual. Let's see. Next, Catherine from radio. Says President Trump of the United States, this is another question, says President Trump of the United States said that he was canceling all U.S. aid to Colombia and to you later. And I think he's responding now. He says, I never canceled it. I said I announced, but I never canceled the cooperation between intelligence agencies. On the contrary, I expanded it. Given the multinational character today of the flows of psychoactive substances, I have asked Marcela, who is here, she can stand up, Marcela Ochoa, is one of the world's most renowned scientists on these issues of what are called psychoactive substances. And she is now our ambassador in Vienna. And there she must wage a battle in the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs. I think he's referring to the UN when he says Vienna. Because what has to be said is, what is a psychoactive substance? What is negative for human beings or more or less? What is a deadly poison? Only science can answer that. No prejudice science. That is the role she has to play in that forum or humanities debate, which is heavily crossed by prejudice and by history, which is better known in the United States than in Colombia itself, a history of persecutions that should never have occurred, and the persecutions that do not need to be carried out thoroughly. A kingpin of kingpins, this is where we get into the audio we just listened to. A kingpin of kingpins in drug trafficking must be pursued, even in the most luxurious city in the world. If the idea of free markets prevents that pursuit, then we are achieving nothing. But if a peasant is persecuted because he has nothing to eat and cannot plant anything other than a vegetation known for thousands of years, and no one could say it did harm, then why is a bomb dropped on his house or his home burned down or he is thrown in jail? That is not an effective struggle. And what Marcela has to do, because this is a global issue, not one of just two countries, is straighten out that fight and point it in the right direction. If intelligence does not direct the gun can even end up pointing at you yourself. But if intelligence directs the gun and it knows where to aim, and it is not aimed at the poor person who is not to blame, it is aimed at the powerful one who today can control the trafficking of women, children, organs, weapons, extremely poisonous substances like fentanyl precursors, the so-called dark web, which you can only access if you are mega rich, where what you see is barbarity against the human species for pleasure. All that kind of addiction, which has to do only with an inability to love and with the absolute solitude that certain social systems build around human beings, important to consume but not to feel, leads you to these serious situations. And then this is resolved with science, with action, and with love. How does U.S. society allow a very important sector of its people to consume fentanyl, which frightens us all today? I'm not a scientist. I am not a psychologist, but I could say there is a path, and that is with a lot of love, not with lonely beings without love. That is my bit of advice. Okay, so now they go question from Catherine Avila of Blue Radio. President, good afternoon. We live for Vox Populi. We're live for Vox Populi Blue Radio. I'd like to ask, I understand you brought data to show that the UN measurements on coca leaf crops in Colombia are wrong. Colombia was decertified regarding its fight against drugs. Did you speak about the possibility of recertifying the country in that regard? And I ask you as well, you were included on the OFAC list, arguing that your peace policy has encouraged drug production in the country. Your wife is also under investigation, Minister Benedetti too. Were you ever shown legal proof at any point to put you on that list? And then he responds, if there was legal proof, I wouldn't be here talking. So that does not exist. I am, in my view, on the OFAC list because of what I said in New York. He's talking about when he spoke at the UN back in September. They have tried to build a case, but they have failed again and again. And that's not the subject I want to discuss here. I will write a book about that. So he's going to say he's going to write a book about that in the future. What he said in New York, by the way, is he thinks that a international, a coalition, like a coalition army should be formed, go into Gaza to stop the IDF from killing people. And effectively, that is what the Board of Peace is. That's what the ISF is. And he, at another point in the speech, he recognizes that what I suggested in September wasn't a threat. It was just a suggestion. And it looks like because of forces that I have nothing to do with, that is now happening, that there is an international body going into Gaza and stopping the killing of innocent people. That's why he said he's been targeted by the deep state. Okay, so the concrete issue is that OFAC does not work as an anti-drug trafficking instrument unless it is complemented by a worldwide pursuit of capital. The rest is symbolic. It causes personal damage, but it does not end drug trafficking, as we know. So how do we go after the capital kingpins internationally? That, I think, is essential, along with capturing them, period. A political use of these kinds of instruments leads only to impunity for real drug trafficking. And on that, we must prevent, in the political fervor that societies have in their internal struggles, that international treaties and instruments that have a specific objective are used to solve something else, because in the end, we would end up in a confusion that renders the instruments we created to fight drug trafficking itself useless. This is all I translated this myself from Spanish to English, so there might be some awkward grammatical stuff. So I'm trying to correct that as I read it. So the OFAC issue does not interest us as a family. What interests us, as long as he's talking about the sanctions against himself and his family members. What interests us, as long as we are the government of my country in the period the country decided I should be president, is that we can leave a better path than the one Colombia had been walking. As for the UNODC figures, he's referring to the UN data on narcotics, which were the first part of your question. UNODC's numbers have been terrible for more than a decade, and one of the topics agree with the United States government is that there must be an independent scientific verification. If we say our peasantry will substitute crops by pulling up coca bushes by the root and replacing them with cacao, which I think is like cocoa, like chocolate, coconut or coffee, that has to be scientifically verified and not by us, so we don't fool ourselves. If in short, in March, there's already a statement just released here while I've been in Colombia from one of those organizations that live off this business and are armed and violent, saying that by March they are ready to eliminate 10,000 to 30,000 hectares of cocaine. That is 10% of what UNODC says exists, just one group. What I want as soon as I return is not that armed organizations should be the ones to say it, but to unleash a peasant movement, a rural social movement that frees itself with or without permission from any armed group that appears there, financed precisely by cocaine and its owners, because cocaine does not finance itself, but its owners. So that Colombia can say we are one step away from being able to say that we have denarcotized our economic system, and that the world hopefully will buy Colombian coffee, cacao, which is chocolate, coconut, and industrial products, and that this is the way to stop planting coca leaf for commercial purposes in the world. He's talking about, by the way, reversing the economic incentive at the ground level for poor people in Colombia to grow cocaine in their backyard, like on their farms, and then sell it to the cartel, right? Or work for the cartel, basically. Today, we already have news from one of those regions in the south on the border with Ecuador. It says, quote, we are capable by March of eliminating 30,000 hectares in Nariño and Putumayo on the border with Ecuador. Let's verify it. I'm not saying we should simply believe it. No, in March it will be verified, and if one of them is lying, he will end up in U.S. prisons for lying. But if it turns out to be true, Colombia will have discovered a peaceful way to eradicate coca leaf crops, and it can be shown to countries that have a problem, that had that problem, and to consumer countries. Colombia does not consume cocaine. The percentages are minimal. It does not consume fentanyl, nor does it produce fentanyl. Consumers in large numbers, wherever they are, their governments have to analyze why that consumption exists. What leads a young citizen sometimes to get lost in the world of fentanyl? Why do they commit suicide? And why are there mass suicides? That is an issue I cannot delve into because I'm the president of Colombia, not of other regions of the world. And somebody else asks, another reporter, and I'm sorry, I went back a little further in the transcript because there's just so much good content here that I think is worth sharing. Thank you very much, good president. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Regarding the decertification of Colombia, what did President Trump or Secretary Rubio lay out? Any data, any figures, any goals that Colombia must achieve before its designation on the majors list is changed? Thank you very much. They keep asking about the OFAC list. He keeps saying, I don't care about being sanctioned. That doesn't bother me to be sanctioned. It's whatever. So he says, I did not know Rubio personally. There were some people there whom I knew, and most whom I did not. But the conversation was with Trump, basically that, and what Trump said in the meeting is that he does not believe in sanctions, that he does not see them in this particular case as rational. And I think he is right. That is what I think as well. You gotta ask yourself, okay, then who did the sanctions? It wasn't Trump who did the sanctions, right? And yet he was on the front line, like doing the true social, like Trumpomania stuff with his posts, right? Like threatening Petro. But here he's saying he doesn't believe in sanctions. He has said that, by the way, in relation to Russia, that he doesn't believe in sanctioning Russia. He's also said he doesn't think sanctions against Iran works at all either. Okay, so, and I think he is right. That is what I think as well. This is not a path of sanctions. This is a path of freedom. This is what Simon Bolivar taught me, and I believe Washington taught it here as well. He's referring to George Washington. So a path of freedom, and so it is on the basis of freedom that real solutions are built. Anything else builds nothing but a path where all that's left is explosives, bombs, dead bodies, and blood. All right, another reporter asks, Maldonado here, you can ask about me and Bogota. How are you going to leave me out, Mr. President? If you make me make this trip and leave me out? He was making a joke about being left out of the White House, out of the Oval Office meeting. He said, no, President, I want, this guy clearly knows Petro from back home. He says, you are talking about Ecuador, your specific request, your petition to President Trump. What is it? Do you want to put him to work to overcome this economic war with Ecuador? But what would his role be? And can we understand from everything that's been said, because President Trump speaks wonders of you, he posted very positive messages of you, you're speaking very well of him, that a new diplomatic, political, and economic era is beginning between the two countries under some condition? And then Petro responds, I think a path is beginning without falling into vanity, right? Because you know that pride is bad, my friend, and greed is worse. Greed kills life. But yes, what is being born is a path, or it is being strengthened because it never disappeared. In reality, a path is born in which different regimes, different ways of thinking, different powers, because we too have power, just a different kind, can meet. There is no need to box. We don't hit each other. We don't scratch each other. We smile at each other. I like you, he told me. I know little English, so I need translations here, and I promise to learn English after I leave the presidency, because then I'll have time. But it is a different path, a meeting between different people without any humiliation, where we try to find solutions according to experience between the two nations around concrete problems. The future, human brotherhood, whether the United Nations is useful or not, that is something we have to figure out later. But this path shows us that the later can be found precisely by talking as human beings talk, the way human beings solve problems, with blows that spill blood, vengeance, and in Latin peoples, we are very harmed by that vendetta ancestry, or by talking. The solution is not vendetta, it is dialogue. The only remedy against vendetta is love and dialogue. And by talking, we human beings understand each other, and that is what we have shown. This is not new. It is simply a new demonstration that it is possible. He's talking, by the way, about the cycle of violence. This is something we've talked about at GART with General Quast. How do you stop the cycle of revenge, the cycle of violence? And the only way to do that is to literally just stop retaliating for what somebody does to you and seek peace. That's the only way to stop it. You can't bomb your way to a lasting peace. Okay, so one last question. He's the president. One last question. Ecuador, not Ecuador. President, I wanted to, but all right. All right. Question from Tom Bateman, BBC. Of the terrorist group of the brother, would you for the first time ask forgiveness, apologize, since you speak of love, for recognizing this is like the 134th time that you don't know, but you know what? Let me speak brother a moment, because so this is Petro interrupting this guy. This guy, I think, is trying to get him, this is BBC, is trying to get him to apologize for being like the head of the cartel. And he's interrupting him, and he's saying, this is like the 134th time that you don't know, But you know what? Let me speak, brother, a moment, because I listened to you and you must let me answer. One of the things we did in the meeting, because that's what it's about, right? Who killed Jorge Elisar Gaitan? No. Who killed 6,000 members of the Patriotic Union? No. Who killed Carlos Pizarro? No. Who tortured me in jail? But what did we tell Trump today? We asked in a letter written in English, we asked him in a letter in English to release, to declassify all the reports that U.S. intelligence has on 2 events in Colombia's history. Trump asked me, were we to blame? And I know this is what we were talking about the other day, that I couldn't quite get my head wrapped around. Trump asked me, were we to blame? He said, I told him, I don't think so, but it doesn't appear in our records. So Trump's asking, were we to blame for something terrible that happened in Colombia? That's what Trump asked him. So he says, first, April 9th, 1948, which began the death of 300,000 Colombian genocide in Colombia. The second event, the taking of the Palace of Justice, first by M19, second by the army, which is tied to a series of events in which another 200,000 Colombians died. In Colombia, there was a genocide that has not yet ended. In our work in building peace, which I personally did with Commander Carlos Pizarro, is to stop the genocide in Colombia and in anywhere in the world. Okay, so hold on. That was not the part that I was looking for. So I apologize. I was word searching for the word Azores because that was the word that he had said right here. Okay, so here it is. So that was a really insightful little passage that we just read. I mean, you can kind of get into the guy's psychology. He's obviously a very deep thinker, right? And seems like a man of peace, a very reasonable partner from what it seems. Okay, so this is the part that he's talking about. He's talking about with opening the border. That was at the beginning of the clip that I played. So he says, I could tell you that in a matter of days before we could offer electric power to Venezuela, and with electric power, if that energy is clean, and it's no less a contradiction that Venezuela should stop burning gas into the atmosphere with a very, very harmful consequence for humanity, and that gas could instead be put into a pipeline and sold to the world with less harmful consequences, or the petroleum products that economic interrelation has existed for a long time and has not been put into operation because of political problems. So Venezuela, Colombia, and the United States themselves have all lost out. One would really have to calculate the economic losses during all these years of blocking each other. Trump himself said it, and it surprised me because I had other ideas. Quote, why did they impose such foolish sanctions, he said. And I say the same. What for? To starve us without solutions for everyone? That is the most anti-economic and irrational thing I've seen. That's why the first thing I did when I became president was to open the border. Today, $1.5 billion cross it, and it could be much more. And what crosses is fundamentally food. But by contrast, what happened when the border was closed is that the main thing traded between the two countries was cocaine. That was irrational. Regarding the drug trafficking issue, which is part of your question, I repeated, he's responding to a question, which I didn't read the question. I repeated the same thing. One must go after the bosses. In the United States, there is a belief, even within intelligence services and politics, and the same in Colombia, that the bosses are those who walk around Colombia in uniform and with rifles, with the various aliases that you as a Colombian journalist know. That is the second line. The third line. The first line of drug trafficking is not what you imagine. The first line of drug trafficking lives in Dubai, in Madrid, in Miami. U.S. agencies know them. I gave President Trump their names and their networks beyond themselves. They are the bosses of bosses. Their capital is outside Colombia, and they must be pursued jointly through an articulation of intelligence services from many parts of the world, and that has been proposed and is being done. Okay, so I just want to repeat that. That guy, he just said we're going after the highest levels of the international crime syndicate, and that has to be done through a joint collective effort. Everyone has to be on the same page of it. It's been proposed, and it's being done. He says that is why on Sunday, what happened? It was only 2 days ago. We, with Colombian naval intelligence and DEA intelligence, combining them, captured a submarine near the Azores with 10 tons of cocaine inside. No one died. I know the name of its owner at this very moment, and I'm waiting for him to be captured. He is not on Colombian territory. And likewise, a ship with 2 tons also on Saturday. So he's saying they captured 2 different submarines, one with 10 tons of cocaine in it, the other one with 2 tons of cocaine in it. Says that is, in just 2 days, we have seized about 15 tons of cocaine without deaths. But on the border with Ecuador, there are dozens. Okay, so then he goes into talking about Ecuador. So now I want to prove what this guy's saying, because I was like, wow, that seems like kind of a big deal. Like, why have we not heard about that? Well, here is CBS News from today. Colombian Navy intercepts, and the really important part, if we go back to this, he says, that is why on Sunday, what happened? It was only 2 days ago, we with Colombian naval intelligence and DEA intelligence, combining them, captured a submarine near the Azores, right? And I went and I checked. I said, I asked various AI, I said, does Colombia have a DEA? No, Colombia does not have a DEA. The only DEA in the world is the DEA in the United States. It's like, that's an interesting comment. Then he says that Colombian naval intelligence was working with the DEA. So then we go to this article from CBS from today. It was just published. Actually, it was published literally 6 minutes before the show started, 1:54 p.m. So this is like a brand new article from CBS News. A semi-submersible vessel, says Colombian Navy intercepts first narco sub of the year, seizes more than 5,000 pounds of cocaine. So they're talking about, in this article, he mentions 2 different subs. They're talking about the sub that had 2 tons of cocaine on it. The other one he mentions had 10 tons of cocaine. So a semi-submersible vessel loaded with over 5,000 pounds of cocaine was intercepted off the Pacific coast of Colombia, the country's Navy said Wednesday. Officials said it marked the nation's first seizure of a so-called narco sub this year. In a social media post, Colombia's Navy said it stopped the semi-submersible about 100 nautical miles from Tumaco, which is close to the Ecuador border. Officials said the narco sub was manned by 2 Colombians and 1 Ecuadorian. And in an image released by the Navy, it showed 3 men being detained behind dozens of piles of packages containing the alleged drugs. Officials said a total of 111 bundles were found containing 2,276 kilograms of cocaine with a street value of about $76 million. The Navy posted the video of the operation, including footage that shows a spotlight shining on the semi-submersible. Another clip shows a naval ship returning to port and officers unloading large bricks of cocaine. There's all the cocaine right there. Semi-submersibles lie very low on the ocean surface, but cannot go fully underwater. They are popular among international drug traffickers because they can often elude detection by authorities. Though most commonly seen off the coast of Colombia, narco subs have been spotted across the globe in recent months. Last month, a narco sub broke into 2 pieces as a fishing boat was towing it to a port in northwestern Spain. In November, the Mexican Navy said it seized about 8,000 pounds of cocaine aboard a narco sub about 150 miles off the resort of Acapulco. In September, the U.S. Coast Guard said it had offloaded more than $54 million worth of cocaine, including over 1,200 pounds of drugs that were seized from a narco sub. 2 months earlier, Interpol said authorities in Guyana seized a semi-submersible sub that was being used for drug trafficking through one of the nation's jungles. The Colombian Navy said it intercepted 20 semi-submersibles in all of 2023, leading to the seizures of 30 tons of cocaine and more than 5 tons of marijuana. That year, a narco sub with 2 dead bodies and nearly 3 tons of cocaine aboard was seized off the coast of Colombia. Okay, so here's CBS News. This is the only article I've been able to find on this in the American media, though I imagine that this is probably going to get reposted, aggregated through all the different channels, right? No mention, by the way, in this article of the DEA. So it's kind of like, all right, well, did Petro misspeak? Like, was he misremembering something? So then we go to, we go to Colombian, because he said this happened last week. This happened like Friday and Saturday is when these 2 different subs or ships were captured, right? Let me see. It's this article. If I can get it to translate and get it to. Here it is. All right, this is from La Libertad, is the outlet. This is from January 29th. So this article is from Thursday. This is from allegedly the day before. Although that does look like a semi-submersible right there. So it says Petro urges the United States to international cooperation after cocaine seizure in the Atlantic. So this is in the Atlantic, not in the Pacific. So it says President Gustavo Petro highlighted Colombia's operational capacity and its willingness to work in coordination with other countries in the fight against drug trafficking after the seizure of 8 tons of cocaine in a narco submarine intercepted near the Azores Islands. The president assured that the result was possible thanks to the exchange of intelligence information between Colombian authorities, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and Portuguese security agencies. As indicated, this operation demonstrates the country's commitment to effective international cooperation against transnational criminal networks. According to official information, the boat had departed from the Colombian coast and was located in the North Atlantic when it was heading towards Europe. Before the submarine sank, authorities managed to secure the cargo and rescue its 4 crew members. The director of the National Police, William Ricon, reported that during the operation, 3 Colombian citizens and 1 Venezuelan citizen were captured, who were placed at the disposal of the judicial authorities in Portugal while investigations progress in the Azores district. Although the Portuguese judicial police confirmed that this is the largest cocaine seizure recorded in its history, in its official statement, it mainly highlighted the support of international agencies such as the DEA, the United Kingdom's National Crime Agency, and the Joint Interagency Task Force south of the United States. Petro's statement comes amid diplomatic tensions with former U.S. President Donald Trump, who on different occasions has launched accusations against the Colombian head of state. However, the Colombian government insisted that the operational results demonstrate its commitment in its fight against drug trafficking. So they're talking about, let's go look at some of these posts. So this is from the Colombian Navy, okay? And this is saying they intercepted the first semi-submersible this year with, and then it gives the scientific name for cocaine, 100 nautical miles off of Colombia. And then they got pictures of like the thing being dragged in. I don't think that's the picture of it. Here's the video. That's all the cocaine, right? All right, so I think a lot of different like operations are being conflated here, because if we go to Google Maps, like clearly they're talking about something that happened in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Colombia. Let's pull our maps up because we like maps here on this show. All right. Okay, so here is Colombia. And you can see clearly there is a very large coastline on the coastline. Actually might even be larger on the Pacific as it is on the Atlantic. It has a coastline on the Atlantic and the Pacific. And so they are off the coast. They said they're 100 nautical miles off of, I think it was Tumaco. Let me see if I can pull that up. Tumaco, which is right there. So they're 100 miles off of Tumaco, which would be, let's measure the distance. That's 10 miles. So they're about right there. That's about roughly, I mean, somewhere, you could probably, it could be in any one of this, but about this region is where somewhere was where they seized it, right? And so they're saying his thesis has been that, like, he pulled a map up. We'll look at that in a second. He's saying that basically ever since he came into power and went to war with these cartels, that they all fled to Ecuador, and that Ecuador is now where they're operating out of. And so what he's saying is that the ships are coming up from Ecuador, and then they are grabbing them as they cross that international boundary between Ecuador and Colombia, right? So now let's go to the Azores Islands. The Azores Islands are all the way over here. See how far away it is? So this used to be a popular spot for pirates to hang out in, because, you know, the pirates of the Caribbean, when they were stealing, when they were bringing the gold, they would bring gold from this part of Mexico, right? They were bringing gold from this part of Mexico, and then they were bringing silver from Peru, from down here, from Lima, because there's a mountain there that's like basically made out of silver. And so they bring the silver up to Panama. There was no Panama Canal, so they'd take it off of the ships. They'd walk it across Panama on donkeys. That was like the most dangerous part of the whole trip, because guys would just, you know, mudslides and disease and bugs and animals and whatever, natives, all of that would very, very dangerous to get it across Panama. Then they load it up on different ships in the Caribbean. They take it across the Caribbean, and the pirates would hide out in all these islands and you know, attack the ships and take the gold, take the silver, take whatever. The other place that they would get attacked is over here, the Canary Islands, the Azores. And so those are the two popular places for pirates to hang out in. So they're saying that they nabbed this other sub off the Azores Islands. That was a joint operation with, sounds like the United States, or I don't know if the United States was involved in that one. Is that what they said? Says the president assured that the result was possible thanks to the exchange of intelligence information between Colombian authorities, the U.S. DEA, and Portuguese security agencies. So the U.S. was involved in that with Portugal and Colombia. And so Colombia was helping to get that data to them so that they could grab them when they were coming through these islands. So that's just proof that you know, they could be working together. So one of them is a sub that was grabbed in the Azores. One of them was a sub that was grabbed off the coast of Colombia. Sounds like the one that was grabbed off the coast in the Azores was the one with 10 tons on it. And then the one that was, wow, it is really snowing here. That's great. My kid's been out of school for like 2 weeks, so it's like a second Christmas break. Yeah. So then it sounds like the one that was off the coast of Colombia was only 2 tons. And then we can go to the maps that he was pulling out. Let's see if we can pull that up. Was it during this one? I don't know if it was during this one or if it was during a different. It might have been. He did a few different press conferences, I think, this week. This one, he didn't pull the maps out. He pulled the maps out in a different one, but I have that picture. Petro, Ecuador. Right here. So here he's explaining that the capos, which is like the term for, you know, the bosses in the mafia or the bosses in the cartel. He says Colombian drug trafficking is going south. It goes through the ports of Ecuador, and there are some capos there who do not live in Colombia. I handed that list to President Trump. And he said, I know who owns the sub. I'm not going to say who it is. We're waiting for him to get captured. He's not living in Colombia. But I know who owns the sub that we captured off the coast of Colombia. So now he's holding a map up. And you can clearly see like that. He's clearly pointing to Colombia right there, and then there's Ecuador down here beneath it. But he's explaining how between 2018 and 2025, how the cocoa crop has moved south and is now being grown in Ecuador. And I think you can see the line right there where that red is. I'm pretty sure that's Ecuador. Let's go back to the map. I'm pretty sure what they're looking at right there is this. You see how it like bumps out right here, how it sticks out? If I go back to that map. Yep. See how it sticks out and then it comes in right where that red starts at the very top of that red. That's the border between Colombia and Ecuador. And so all that red right there is Ecuador. And so from that map, I can kind of discern that he's talking about this whole area right here is where it looks like a lot of that stuff is happening, but then also inland as well. Actually, that map is not Colombia. That map is Ecuador. So then that's Peru. Let's go back and look at that again. That is. Yeah. That map is of yeah, I'm looking at it right now. That map is definitely Ecuador. Interesting. Very interesting. At least it looks like it. It's hard to say. That could be Colombia. That could actually be Colombia. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm getting sidetracked here. Let's go back to the transcript. Okay, so then he goes on to say, in just 2 days, we seized 15 tons of cocaine without deaths, but on the border of Ecuador, there are dozens of burned alive dead. These are two different methods, two different ways of understanding the fight against drug trafficking, one brutal and self-serving, which actually ends up promoting mafioso and narco trafficking powers, and another intelligent, which is effective. And I told President Trump, if you want an ally in the fight against drugs, it is the fight against the bosses of the bosses. I showed him videos of how peasants today, by the thousands, and here in the person in charge of the program, Gloria, you can stand up a bit. She is managing to, and it's a woman who stands up. She is managing to get thousands of peasants to pull up the cocoa plants by the roots themselves, pull the cocoa bush up by the root. That is the most effective way to eradicate it. The rest is lies, because a poison falls on the leaves. It does not destroy the vegetation. It kills the species, and then it grows back and grows back more productive. I think he's talking about like spraying pesticides down to kill the cocaine plant. And issues like that come from our own experience, which in Colombia is vast and which links up with the world and wants to be offered to the world. And when experience joins with intelligence, we are also effective. That is why my government is the one that has seized the most thousands of tons of cocaine in all of human history, the one that has extradited the most Colombians for being involved in that business, but the one that can say it kills the fewest people as a government, the one that can say it can teach and can learn quickly, the one that can say its hand is extended to Venezuela itself, to Ecuador, to Mexico, to England, to the United Arab Emirates, to Albania, and to the government of the United States, among others. It's an interesting list that he just rattles off there. We were just talking about Albania with Oak on Monday on the Book of Trump because of Kosovo. To manage to defeat a great multinational, transnational criminal organization whose great capital is not in Bogota, and whose bosses, some Colombian, most are not Colombian, could flood the world with fentanyl with the danger that represents for the human species. And they could be effective in stopping the leaders of the great transnational criminal organization we face today, multinational, as we Colombians say. Okay, and then I do just want to read this next little passage because it's about the friendship with Trump. So David Culver of CNN says, I just saw some photos of you and President Trump, and you really look like a great friends. And well, a message from the president says, quote, it was a great honor, but only a month ago there was, as you say, tension, wasn't there? A war of words. So what changed? So then Petro responds, I think that was some optimism, especially in Latin America, where this kind of news has its first impact, and more distantly in the rest of the planet, people can see another path. A month ago, no more, I would go back to when I was at the UN General Assembly in New York last year, September. What we had then was practically the nearness of a total war. I myself dared to propose at the UN, under the immunity of the UN Charter, that it seemed that there was no alternative but to build a Salvation Army and to enter Palestine to defend Gaza. Obviously, that was taken by those who looking at the problem from another point of view as an aggression. And it was not. If you look carefully at what happened in the following days, not because of me, not because of what I said, but because of the reality of global tension in the face of genocide, multitudes went out into the streets in Europe, in the United States, and in many cities around the world, including Bogota and Medellin, where our demonstrators were beaten. But around the world, crowds came out. The words spoken at the UN General Assembly by many leaders, including European NATO leaders, who showed that the response to the genocide was isolated from humanity, were accompanied by crowds in Europe, North America, South America, Asia, etc. Words and crowds, and what there was on the other side was dollars and missiles. In a matter of days, that changed, and Trump himself told Netanyahu no more. Of course, we still have much to discuss about what is happening in Gaza now. The solution is not there yet, but the rain of bombs we had before and the hundreds and hundreds of children who died every day, murdered, have diminished. The debate continues, and I won't go deeper into this because it was not a topic of our conversation, but it shows how in days the world can change, as a very famous New York journalist said at the beginning of the 20th century. So what you are seeing now obviously does not have the same importance. I saw it much more in the days following the UN Assembly. Today, there is a global debate for all the civilizations of the world. What is Europe's role? What is the role of the Arab world at this moment? What is the role of the United Nations when we are approaching a new election of a general secretary? What? Did it show its inability? Is reform necessary? Are we heading toward burying the United Nations, or towards something beyond the UN that brings together human brotherhood and dialogue between civilizations? These are issues that were not and were not meant to be the subject of this meeting, but they open paths. The president of the United States received in his home a Latin American president. I am not the first, nor will I be the last. And we spoke about concrete problems and shared ways to solve them. He has not changed his way of thinking on many issues. Neither have I. But how is a pact made? A pact is not between identical twins. A pact is between opponents who can find paths to human fraternity. And it can be done in days. Yes, I saw peace being made in Colombia. I myself was a protagonist in 3 hours, and it made me president of Colombia. And then that then begins the passage that I read earlier. So again, I think this guy is really, really wise. I think he's really intelligent. I think the stuff that he talks about is really important. He speaks in a way that I would expect like a true, earnest sovereign leader exercising first principles to speak. Like, that is how I want world leaders to speak, the way he's speaking. Now, talk is cheap. You got to back it up with words. You got to back up words with action, but I think he has demonstrated. I mean, that's not the first time I've heard it said that his administration has seized more cocaine than any other government in human history. I've heard that said many times. I didn't believe it the first time I read it. I was like, that might be a little bit of hyperbole, but the more I look into it, the more that he might be telling the truth. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. We now have, reporting from both Colombian media and American media that shows that there seems to be collaboration between Trump and Trump's government, rather his DEA, and this guy Petro. And what I think is really interesting is that, remember, like all the stuff we've gone into on Maduro in the past, Maduro's people defected. That guy, Saab, I think his name is Eric. Is it Eric Saab? He's the one who came over in 2019 and was like an informant. Like, he informed the cartels to the DEA, and then he was sent back during the Biden administration to in a prisoner exchange to Venezuela, and then Maduro made him a top official in the government, the Minister of Industry, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so I think that we can kind of put a pin in that. I thought that was it was good. I really wanted to hear that speech. That speech seemed like it was full of richness, like good content, and I think that it delivered. Talking about going after the kingpins, like the bosses of bosses, talking about going after financial institutions, talking about going after transnational crime organizations from the top down. Juicy stuff. That's the stuff we want to hear about. All right, so let's take a break. We'll come back and we will talk about we got
what would I leave unsaid? What would I leave undone? What would I leave behind? I just want to say I love you. Make sure you
The following ad is rated M for mature. Soft Disclosure wants you to get naked this Valentine's Day with limited edition his and her bundles that save you 20% off the individual retail prices. Proprietary oil infusions, grass-finished beef tallow, goat's milk from American goats, locally grown herbs and ingredients. Soft Disclosure is putting America First fruits on your skin.
And for these sexy bundles, we've added an all-new boar's haired beard brush and a solid jade gua sha. And the reason I'm here is because Alpha doesn't know how to say these words.
Kusha. His, hers. We need a moment to calm down. Don't hide your skin. Disclose it. Get naked this Valentine's Day with Soft Disclosure. Head over to softdisclosure.com and save 20% off individual retail prices with our his and hers customizable bundles, and use promo code NAKED to save 15% off the rest of the site. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Promo code does not apply to bundle discounts.
Welcome to Benson Honey Farms, where every jar is pure gold. Benson's Honey is excited to be back on Badlands Media with their latest 2025 honey harvest straight from their farm in Nebraska. While they've been busy working to improve our state politics from the ground up, they never forgot the importance of sharing the best honey around. Did you know honey isn't just a sweet treat? It's nature's medicine, perfect for alleviating allergies, soothing upset stomachs, or as a delicious natural sweetener for baking. Benson Honey is never heated, ensuring you receive it in its pure, raw form, full of natural goodness. At Benson Honey Farms, quality and purity is top priority, and they're committed to providing the finest honey from hive to home. Join the supportive community and enjoy a special offer. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/honey and use promo code Badlands for 15% off of your purchase. Benson Honey Farms. Savor the authentic taste of Nebraska and support this America First business. Follow on Facebook at Benson Honey Farms.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
All right. Welcome back to Geopolitics with Ghosts for Hour 2. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. And I'm happy to be joined by y'all today. Thanks for being here. Please hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying the show. I wanted to point out a few things. Claire Cat in the chat, thank you for pointing out it was Alex Saab, not Eric Saab. I'm just getting a brain fart here. My brain is getting a little too overloaded. I think I need to clean out some space. I need to clear out my hard drive because I'm starting to forget names. But I wanted to also point out, where are you? Misbehaving Irishman. I was trying to pull your chat up on. Yeah, here it is. I was stationed at Roto, Spain, naval installation 7477, Spain's southernmost tip, 30 kilometers from the Rock of Gibraltar. The amount of green Moroccan hash that went through there was staggering. Burp. Well, Irishman, appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you being here. We also had somebody share this. This was SD Gardner. That's why I love the chat, man. The chat, live by the chat, die by the chat. Shared a link to a press release. Let's get this up on screen. This is from yesterday. It says U.S. Coast Guard marks 200,000 pounds of cocaine seized in Operation Pacific Viper. That is really interesting. Let's see what it says. It says the U.S. Coast Guard announced Thursday to seize more than 200,000 pounds of cocaine in the Eastern Pacific Ocean since Operation Pacific Viper. Since launching Operation Pacific Viper in early August, the Coast Guard reached this milestone following recent interdictions of 13,337 pounds of cocaine by Coast Guard cutter Seneca and 13,263 pounds by Coast Guard cutter Robert Ward. Quote, Operation Pacific Guard or Pacific Viper has proven to be a crucial weapon in the fight against foreign drug traffickers and cartels in Latin America and has sent a clear message that we will disrupt, dismantle, and destroy their deadly business exploits wherever we find it, said U.S. Department of Homeland Security Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. The more than 75 million lethal doses seized during this operation will never reach our schools and neighborhoods to poison our children or tear apart American families. And cutting off the flow of these deadly drugs, the Coast Guard is saving American lives and delivering on President Trump's promise to make America safe again and reestablish our maritime dominance. With 1.2 grams of cocaine being a potentially lethal dose, the total seized through Operation Pacific Viper equates to more than 75 million potential deadly doses kept off U.S. streets. Let me see if there's anything. Yeah, so this doesn't talk about any. This doesn't talk about Colombia, like it doesn't mention Colombia, but it does mention right here detecting and interdicting narco-terrorism on the high seas involves significant interagency and international coordination. U.S. Southern Command's Joint Interagency Task Force South, based in Key West, Florida, detects and monitors both aerial and maritime transit of illegal drugs. Once interdiction becomes imminent, the law enforcement phase of the operation begins, and control of the operation shifts to the U.S. Coast Guard throughout the interdiction and apprehension. Interdictions in the Eastern Pacific Ocean are performed by members of the U.S. Coast Guard under the authority and control of the U.S. Of the Coast Guard's Southwest District, headquartered in Alameda, California. That is interesting. That is really interesting. And, you know, going back to the map, if I believe the rule of thumb is that 200 miles off the coast of any country is like their territory, which would be about like there for Colombia, right? And then for Panama, it would be Panama. I would imagine Panama probably has given us their permission to go in their waters. I don't know. I doubt Venezuela may have. I don't know. But that means that they're probably seizing a lot of this like out here in international waters, which would explain why some of the cartels are sending their boats up closer to the coastline to avoid the U.S. Coast Guard, who's probably operating out in international waters. I'm just guessing at all this, but that would make sense to me. That would explain why they caught one boat 100 miles off the coast, close enough to be to be out of international waters, but 100 miles away, right? Interesting. All right, so let's pivot now to the Middle East, because there is a lot of stuff happening there that needs to be discussed. And we should start with Erdogan. So I wrote about Erdogan. I just recorded a show this morning, the Saturday Badlands Blitz with Burning Bright. So this is fresh in my mind, talking with him about this. But I called it the Erdogan's Tour of Champions. in the Badlands news brief. Pretty much he spent the week he went to Saudi Arabia and Egypt were the two big ones. But here he is in Saudi Arabia on, I believe this is Tuesday. So he gets the Trump treatment, right? The royal treatment, rather. MBS meets him, gives him a little kiss, daps him up, shows him some love. Right? They roll out the, everyone's dressed to the nines. They're rolling out the red carpet. This is significant, by the way, because, Saudi Arabia and Turkey have had kind of a rough history. They haven't been like totally copacetic, despite the fact that Saudi Arabia is, OPEC and friends of the United States because of all that, friends with Britain, and Turkey, of course, is part of NATO. But there's just a lot of like bad history there, right? With the Ottoman Empire. I mean, it was the Ottoman Empire that sent the Rashid clan in like 1891 to kill all the Saudis, and they thought they killed them all, but they didn't. They didn't kill MBS's grandfather and his parents, who escaped, and then he came back 10 years later with the Muslim Brotherhood and killed all them and took back his hometown. That would be Diriyah, the suburb of Riyadh. Okay, so then we get there was this. I thought that I just post this because I thought this was funny. This this was posted and everyone was like, why will MBS refuse to let this guy's hand go? They're like walking around holding hands together, which again, I think there's just a lot of like honor culture in the East that we don't really quite grasp here in the West. They still kind of embrace this honor culture that I think the West used to embrace, but I think we just live in a very cynical era where all of our leaders are just like vicious liars and reprobates and thieves. And I think that's trickled down to our culture and just made our culture kind of rotten. So people don't really have a really high opinion of our society. They don't have a high opinion of our culture. They don't have a high opinion of any of it because they see what the leadership is and how they behave. The leadership clearly doesn't value the culture. So people don't value the culture. And that creates dishonorable men, dishonorable societies, right? All right. So so they then hold a Turkish Saudi investment forum where they announce a bunch of deals. They announce a bunch of bilateral deals. Of course, they kind of I believe they formalized the security pact that was announced before. We've covered on the show a few times. That would be the Article 5 style defense treaty between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. I think they announced that. They formalized it. They may have done a signing ceremony. And then Erdogan leaves Saudi Arabia and he gets on a plane and he flies over to Egypt. And this is actually as important as the Saudi trip was, the Egypt one was 10 times more important because of the very recent rift between Egypt and Turkey. And I'm referring to, of course, the Arab Spring, 2011. We get the Arab Spring, which was a number of color revolution regime change operations that suddenly unfold in a matter of weeks across every Arab country, including North Africa. And the two places where it really took root and were most effective were Libya and Egypt. Libya, of course, they dragged Gaddafi out of his castle, killed him, looted his armory. And then Egypt, they overthrew the government, held a new election. The Muslim Brotherhood wins the election. Mohamed Morsi is the guy's name. He comes in and becomes president of Egypt in 2012. And then I believe it was in 2013, the U.S. military working with loyalists in the Egyptian military organize a counterinsurgency, and that counterinsurgency is led by General al-Sisi. And then, so they overthrow the Muslim Brotherhood. They capture Mohamed Morsi, arrest him, throw him in prison, and then al-Sisi becomes president. Al-Sisi is still president to this day. Mohamed Morsi goes to trial, and then actually in the courtroom, like in the trial room in 2019, has a heart attack and dies. Very strange. But throughout that revolution in 2011, Erdogan is highly vocal in his support of the revolutionaries, of the people. He's like, and again, as are the entire Western media. Like Lara Logan was out there pumping it. Like everyone's out there pumping it. Fox News is pumping it. CNN's pumping it. It's a uniparty shill fest where everyone is saying, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. This is great. Democracy, democracy, take back what is yours. Democracy, democracy. Same bullshit we're seeing in Iran now. Same bullshit we saw in Ukraine in 2014. And the fact that you saw Lara Logan and Fox News and all them out there pushing for it, you really need to understand how just awful this is. And again, they were supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Lara Logan, like, maybe won't admit that, but she was supporting the Muslim Brotherhood when they were saying this is like a positive thing and that these rebels are taking back their institutions and they're taking back, power of the people and all that stuff. It was the Muslim Brotherhood that got installed. MI6. So, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So how does this all end? Because when Sisi comes back into power, there's just no relationship between Turkey and Egypt. No discussion, no conversation, no communication, no diplomacy. They are mortal enemies at that point because Egypt views Turkey as the enemy. I mean, they were the ones who openly accuse Erdogan and Turkey of financially supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and Mohamed Morsi, which may be true. We don't know. And again, that's one of the reasons that over the years, I was always kind of like, is Erdogan a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He's an enigma. He and others to me were enigmas for many years. I didn't know what to make of him. But Trump, of course, has been highly supportive of Erdogan going back in 2019. And then October 7th happens. Israel invades Gaza. King Salman of Saudi Arabia and his son MBS invite the entire Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57 nations, to Riyadh in November of 2023 for an emergency meeting because they're like, we all need to get on the same sheet of music and organize a response here. We can't have countries going rogue and starting a war with Israel. And that leads to Iran going to Saudi Arabia, which had never happened before since the Ayatollah came into power in 1979. It leads to Turkey and Egypt reestablishing communication through MBS. He facilitated that. You then get Sisi and Erdogan eventually over the, since November 2023, traveling back and forth, visiting one another. First, they sent diplomats, then they started visiting one another. And then that all culminates in this meeting earlier this week.
One of them is related to trade.
For some reason, this player is not very, I don't know why this is not playing very smoothly. I hope that's not the case for all of the news brief, but for some reason, it's just not compressing very well. Let me pull up I have the original video. Let me pull that up. Give me 2 seconds. This would be saved right here.
Seven deals have been signed between them. One of them is related to trade. We don't quite know all the details of.
All right, so now I can pull it up on the browser. I don't know why the player is not playing very well. That could be the video file. I'm hoping it's not. It could just be Substack. It could be StreamYard. Whatever it is, it's just not playing very smooth. It's very choppy, at least on my end. So, let me see if I can get the raw file opened. Okay, this seems to be smoother. Let's see if this works.
Have been signed between them. One of them is related to trade. We don't quite know all the details of that yet. One of the other deals, interestingly as well, is a military framework agreement between the two countries. And that's particularly significant, I think, because if you go back just 5 or 6 years, these two countries are not were not getting on at all. And now we have this agreement being signed between the two sides. They're cooperating in the defense industry, in the military as well. And this shows you how it's gone from a very low point to really one of the highest points there is when you have two countries that are cooperating on defense. They're sharing cooperation and industry technology, that kind of thing. Because in the last few months, particularly at the Egyptian International Defense Fair last year in December, there was something like more than 80 Turkish companies registered to attend that event. They also unveiled a drone, which is being worked on by Havelsan, a Turkish company, and also the Egyptian defense industry as well. Outside of that, they're working together on an unmanned land vehicle as well. And for this to have happened just a few years ago would have been considered pretty unbelievable. So it just goes to show you how things are developing between these two countries, and really at quite a fast rate. As you said there, the trade, a very important issue, something like 9 billion volume in trade at the moment. They're trying to reach 15, and despite all the problems they've had over the years, trade still continued, even if diplomatic ties weren't at the highest level.
Yeah, so they reiterate there, and that reporter reiterating that these countries did not get along. But as Erdogan announces during this meeting, Egypt is the highest trade partner, the largest trade partner in volume with Turkey. That's a pretty big deal in Africa, at least. And then there are a few other articles that I want to share on this that I think are really interesting. Then I want to pull up the map and we can kind of look at that. That is this article, and yeah, these articles. Okay. So here's Egypt and Turkey solidify partnership, joint declaration of Second Strategic Cooperation Council. Egypt and Turkey issued a joint declaration on Wednesday following the second meeting of the high-level Strategic Cooperation Council between the two countries. The meeting was held during the visit of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to Egypt and following talks with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi at the presidential palace. The joint declaration reads as follows. Egypt and Turkey recalling the establishment of the high-level Strategic Cooperation Council and the convening of its first meeting in Ankara on September 4th, 2014, under the joint chairmanship of the two heads of state, guided by the deep-rooted historical and fraternal ties that bind Egypt and Turkey. Noting that with satisfaction, the positive momentum achieved in bilateral relations in recent years and affirming their determination to strengthen coordination and cooperation in international and regional forums in support of global efforts aimed at addressing common challenges, including international peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, environmental protection, and food security. I don't think we need to read this whole thing. It's a very, very long, but it does note there the last time these two countries met in this capacity was September 4th, 2014. That's 12 years, almost 12 years ago, right? That is a very long time for countries that are as geographically close as they are to not be meeting in this capacity, which just goes to show the rift that's been between them. Now, the other story that I wanted to share. So there's this one. We skipped over this. With Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Saudi Arabia is building a $2 billion solar farm in Turkey. That's a big deal because, as I've said, I think it makes the most sense if we're going to develop solar. Solar is a viable energy source, like energy production instrument. General Costa said that. President Trump has said that. The problems with it is it's just the technology isn't there yet. The solar cell technology isn't there yet. Most importantly, the battery technology isn't there yet. So it's very intermittent, which means that it's unreliable because you have to have sunlight in order to get the battery to charge, and the battery can't hold a charge long enough, until you have sunlight again, right? So that's the problem with it. It has to be developed, but that requires actually investing money in it and developing it. It doesn't make any sense to me that we would develop solar farms in places like Britain or Seattle or New England, where, you're not getting as much sunlight. Certain parts of the year you're getting no sunlight. It makes sense to me that you would develop it in places like Tucson, Arizona, right? Like Scottsdale, Arizona, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the Middle East, places that are super arid where you're getting sunlight 360 days of the year, you're getting sunlight. That seems like a good place to be the laboratory to develop solar. So Saudi Arabia doing this with Turkey makes all the sense in the world to me. And the fact that you have, one of the top producers of oil investing in solar is encouraging. Wind is garbage. We can all agree that wind is garbage, but solar, I think, has application and has potential. It just needs to be developed. So they are developing that. And then the other story is this one from Azerbaijan to Somalia. It says Turkey is deploying more F-16s overseas. Turkey deployed at least 3 of its American-made Lockheed Martin F-16 Viper fighter jets to Somalia in late January. The move is the latest in a long line of recent Turkish overseas deployments of its Air Force's 4th-generation warplanes to allied countries, some of them in or near active conflict zones. The jets touched down in Somalia's coastal city of Mogadishu on the Indian Ocean on January 28th. Satellite images analyzed by the Middle East Eye, that's Muslim Brotherhood, news outlets suggested that Turkey had built new hangars for these fighters at the city's international airport. Turkish cargo planes made several flights to the airport in the 10 days preceding the arrival of the jets. Somalia already hosts Turkey's largest military base. In its report on the development, Bloomberg noted that the jets were sent to support ongoing Turkish drone strikes against the al-Shabaab militant group and to protect Turkish interests in the strategic African country. In addition to its military base in Mogadishu, Turkey plans to deploy an oil platform to drill offshore and even build a spaceport. Such sizable investments undoubtedly require increased security. A critical editorial in Israel's right-wing Israel Hayom newspaper argued that the arrival of the jets marked the kinetic underpinnings of Turkey's denunciation of Israel's recognition of the breakaway state of Somaliland in December 2025, the first and only country to officially do so. Whatever the case, but the deployment isn't entirely unprecedented. Turkey has the second largest F-16 fleet in the NATO alliance and the third largest worldwide. Turkey's F-16s make up the backbone of its all-American fighter fleet, which also consists of a small number of older F-4 Phantoms that have stayed in service for several years beyond their originally planned retirement date. Since Turkey joined NATO in 1954, it has always flown American-made fighter jets, including the North American F-86, Republican F-84, Lockheed F-104, Convair F-102, North American F-100, and Northrop F-5. It began receiving its first F-16s in 1987 and eventually acquired 270 by 2012. In the early 2020s, it sought 40 of the most modern Block 70 variants to keep its fleet up to date. I think we reported months ago that they canceled those upgrade packages because they figured out how to do it themselves. Let me see if I thought there was something in here about, so they're looking at getting some Typhoon fighters, the Eurofighter. So they finalized a landmark deal for Eurofighter Typhoons from the United Kingdom late last year, back in December. And then they're also building an indigenous stealth fighter, the TF Con. So I think this is important because let's go look at the map. And I'm going to just take a screenshot. Let me take a screenshot, and I'm going to throw this into a format that I can mess with. So let me pull up Photopedia. All right, so share my screen. All right, so now we're looking at this map. I can draw. I wanted to get in this format so I could draw on it. All right, so we now have a deal. We have a security deal that was spearheaded by Saudi Arabia, right? So we have Saudi Arabia here in the middle. Let's get a thicker marker here. That's too thick. Too thin. There we go. All right, so we got Saudi Arabia here in the middle, right? So Saudi Arabia signs a deal last fall with Pakistan. This is after Qatar. And let's do a different color. Let's make this one red. Right? And this was after Qatar was bombed by Israel. Qatar, of course, is right here. Okay. So Qatar is bombed by Israel. And as a result, a lot of things change in the Middle East. The Middle East gets very, very worried because if they have the balls to bomb a place like Qatar that hosts CENTCOM and has a significant U.S. military and U.S. intelligence presence, then nobody's safe. If they can do that and get away with it, then nobody's safe. So Saudi Arabia then signs the deal with Pakistan. Pakistan's the only Muslim nuclear power in the world with nuclear weapons. And Pakistan, of course, was in a long battle with India, a long historic feud. Pakistan is India. They're both kind of similar cultures. Just Pakistan is almost exclusively Muslim, whereas India is like 50-50 Muslim and Hindu. And India, of course, allies with Israel. So it makes sense that Pakistan's going to align themselves with the seat of the Muslim homeland, right? Saudi Arabia. So that alliance makes sense. This is a Article 5 style defense agreement where if anybody attacks Saudi Arabia, Israel, Pakistan's going to come to their aid, and they have nukes. If anybody attacks Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia is going to come to their aid, and Saudi Arabia has not only significant financial resources, but a lot of clout geopolitically. They have a lot of friends. And so this is a mutually beneficial deal. Then Saudi Arabia announces a deal with Turkey. All right. So here's Turkey right here. Same kind of deal. And my understanding is that the Turks and in Pakistan, I think they are also working on that similar. It's going to be like a trilateral kind of deal where this applies to all of them, right? Anyone attacks Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia are coming, etc. Now we have from yesterday or from this week, Egypt. Okay. So let's change color here. So now we have a deal between Egypt and Turkey. We have a deal between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. We have a deal between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. I believe we have a deal between Turkey and Pakistan, but I got to verify that. But I'm pretty sure that that's a trilateral deal. And it's probably only a matter of time before Egypt is probably brought in with Pakistan. And Saudi Arabia and Egypt are close enough already aligned politically that if anyone messes with one, the other one's going to come running. I think MBS has even joked in the past that Al-Sisi, he keeps Al-Sisi in his back pocket. That's what somebody said, trying to like besmirch their relationship. But there's probably a little bit of truth to that. The point is that you can see that there's this security architecture that's in place in the Middle East. We also now have reports that we just covered of F-16s from Turkey and Azerbaijan, F-16s in Mogadishu, Somalia, right? All right. And you have two trade routes that run through, because this is if we go to the map, right? This is the crossroads of the whole world. This is what MBS has been saying for 10 years. The crossroads, the geographic crossroads of the whole world is the Middle East, right? If you want to get from Africa to Asia, if you want to get from Asia to Europe, if you want to get from Russia to Africa, you got to go through the Middle East. So And that's not a revolutionary concept. That's been understood for centuries. I mean, for millennia. So the two big trade routes now are the traditional trade route, which is you want to get from Mumbai to Europe, right? The traditional trade route is you go from Mumbai is a huge shipping port. You come down here through the Gulf of Aden, you go up past Djibouti, in between Saudi Arabia and Egypt, through the Suez Canal, and up to Europe. That's been the traditional trade route since the 1860s, since they built the Suez Canal. That has been how you get goods from Asia to Europe. The new trade route that they have developed, you come out of Mumbai and you land at, there's two different places you can land, but I know that Bandar Abbas, I think, is somewhere like right here. You then get on you get on trains, you go across Iran, you go up to Azerbaijan, Baku, right? Then you go from Baku, you go into Russia and up to Moscow. Those are the two different trade routes that obviously run right through the Middle East, and they connect all of it, like all the Asian markets to Europe, which are like the two really obviously very, very big, important markets, right? And they've always been controlled externally, and they've always been controlled, I think, the Middle East has been destabilized for a reason. It's been destabilized to control, to make sure that the Middle East doesn't stand up on its own and assert its dominance over its territory, and box out bad actors, box out actors like the East India Company, MI6, CIA, Mossad, etc. So by placing, if you wanted to create, let's just like think representationally. Let's think in the abstract. Let's think of like diagramming. Like we're going to diagram a fortress here. We're making a fortress. Let me see if I can find a good color here. Maybe we'll go with like aqua. All right. I want to build a fortress. Fortress needs to have walls. Here's one wall, because you have a gateway here between the Middle East and Africa, right? And the access point between the Middle East and Africa, Egypt. Here's another wall, one of the most famous in history, between the Middle East and Europe, and that's Turkey, right? That's Istanbul. It used to be called Constantinople. It used to be the Byzantine Empire before it was the Ottoman Empire, and now it's Turkey. That's another wall. And then a third wall is right here. India, Asia, right? India at Pakistan, that takes you, because Nepal, everything north of Nepal, Tibet, this is like 35,000 feet right here. This is like a giant shelf. This is like 30, like planes don't even fly. Let me circle this. Planes don't even fly up here because it's so, like the mountains here are so high. So the planes just fly around that. That's how high up it is. So you're not marching an army across that. If you're getting from Southeast Asia to the Middle East, you're going through India and Pakistan. All right. So that's your third wall. This is a fortress now. All right. There's a security architecture here. And then you have two really important choke points that you need to control. You need to control this choke point right here, the Gulf of Aden, which leads you into the Red Sea. It's the front door to the Red Sea. I need a better color than that. You got to control the Gulf of Aden. And then you really got to control right here, Baku, the coast of Azerbaijan. Because if I go back to the map and I pull up the topography and I go to like a satellite image, we covered this on the Book of Trump when we were looking at the Georgian Chechen wars, right? The Chechen wars and then later the Georgian wars. This is all mountains. You got the Greater Caucasus and the less. You got the Greater Caucasus right here, which is a big mountain range. Then you got the Lesser Caucasus down here that run through Georgia, and that means that Georgia is basically just a big valley that runs from Azerbaijan down to the Black Sea. The only flat part in this entire area right here that connects Russia to the Middle East is right here on this coastline. So if you look at historically, like how the Mongols and the Caliphates and like every horseback riding army would have traveled through this region, all of them came along this coastline. They had to go around the mountains and up the coastline. So that's why the pipelines and the railroads and everything that run from north and south on the north-south transportation corridor, that's that purple line I drew, they all run on this coastline too. So that means that if there's a choke point anywhere in the Caucasus from a trade perspective, from a security perspective, it's right here at Azerbaijan, where Azerbaijan meets Dagestan. And so that's where they've parked F-16s, right? So they got F-16s there. They got F-16s down in Somalia to protect the Gulf of Aden. This is a fortress. The Middle East they have built themselves a fortress. All right. And they trust one another now, at least to the extent that they can sign these agreements and say, look, we're not going to have everything figured out and it's not all kumbaya, but we have shared interest here. We don't want these outsiders coming in here and controlling our lands and controlling our people and controlling our governments and overthrowing us and doing all this. We need to work together to box all them out so that we can have control over our own territory from a sovereign alliance standpoint, not from a caliphate standpoint, not from a centralized global government standpoint. This is a multipolar world order alliance, right? Sovereign nations acting in their best interest together. And we haven't even, by the way, discussed Iran, which is right here, and the role that they're definitely going to play in all this, because Iran, of course, has the most powerful military of all these places. Turkey has the largest military, but Iran has the most powerful military. So they're definitely going to be part of this thing. Okay. But this is a new era in the Middle East, one that we have never seen before, frankly, because the last time that they were this unified, they were a caliphate, and they operated very different than they're operating now. Caliphate being a top-down centralized control. This is multipolarity. So this is pretty exciting. This is a sovereign alliance proof, in my opinion, and this is a fundamental shift in how geopolitics are going to go from now on. By the way, Israel is no longer the center of influence and power in the Middle East. They're either going to get on board with this and bend the knee to this new security architecture, or they're going to be confronted and FAFO, right? So we'll see. The only thing that has to happen from here on out, like the last thing that this group needs to do, there's a lot of things to figure out, of course, a lot of problems to solve, a lot of differences to work through. But from a geopolitical standpoint and a security standpoint and a stability standpoint, obviously the 800-pound gorilla in the room is Israel. So turning their attention now to Netanyahu and dealing with that and the Greater Israel Project and everything that spins out from that, the dispensationalism, the Christian Zionism, all that. I think all of that is extremely important, and that's probably the next thing that happens. And I imagine that President Trump and President Putin and Xi Jinping are all, because all of them have vested interest in this region, of course. They're all going to help in that situation. So we'll see what happens. But I think this diagram for me is very, very interesting. And I'll probably save this picture because isn't that a pretty picture? Wouldn't you hang that on your wall? I would. I don't think I went back to sharing my screen after I was when I was drawing again, but this is the screen again. So I didn't really draw anything after I went to the Caucasus. I was just kind of making a point, but hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Let's go to, so now there's actually a really significant news story that I want to cover because this is related to all the things that we've talked about on this show. And that would be this. U.S.-backed group seeks major stake in DR Congo mining sector. Glencore has announced a potential multi-billion-dollar divestment in its copper and cobalt operations in the Orion, or operations to the Orion Critical Mineral Consortium. The Anglo-Swiss multinational Glencore has agreed to sell a 40% stake in two of its copper and cobalt projects in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to a U.S. government-backed investment group. The deal comes as Washington intensifies efforts to secure access to minerals vital to access to advanced manufacturing, renewable energy technologies, and national defense supply chains. In a statement on Tuesday, Glencore said it has entered into a non-binding agreement for the potential sale of the stakes in its Mutanda Mining and Komodo Mining Company assets in the African state to the Orion Critical Mineral Consortium. The company said the deal values Mumi, which is Mutandi or Mutanda, and KCC at a combined enterprise value of about $9 billion, while Glencore would retain operational control. Quote, through this partnership, we would be able to support the ambitions of the U.S. government and private sector with the supply of two critical minerals, Glencore CEO Gary Nagel stated. Orion CMC was established in October 2025 and is led by Orion Resource Partners in partnership with the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Its creation followed a peace agreement earlier that year mediated by U.S. President Donald Trump between Rwanda and the DR Congo to end decades of violence in Eastern Congo. The accord set out a regional economic framework linked to a U.S.-backed investment in the country's cobalt, coltan, and other critical minerals, an area where Western media and analysts say Washington is seeking to curb China's dominance. The head of the DFC has said the proposed partnership could strengthen U.S.-DR Congo economic ties, help secure a reliable source of critical minerals for the U.S. and its partners, and support economic growth and stability in the DR Congo. Glencore has operated in the DR Congo, the world's leading producer of cobalt, for more than 2 decades and is one of the country's largest industrial mining companies. It has, however, faced allegations from nonprofit groups over pollution in the copper belt, including concerns about wastewater and contamination near Kolwezi. The company has also pleaded guilty to bribery charges in the U.S. and has faced a tax penalty of nearly $900 million in the DR Congo. So the reason that this story stuck out to me, obviously, it's the Congo. You're talking about rare earth, you're talking about minerals, you're talking about a group, the Orion group, who I need to look into more. I want to learn everything there is to know about this group. Seems to be backed by Trump. I mean, Trump signed the deal, signed the peace deal, and then this group evolves into existence in October, and now they've signed a deal with Glencore. You'll recall that, let me pull up the mind map, let that load. While that's loading, let me pull up this. Okay, so here is from ChatGPT. I just went to ChatGPT, and I already kind of knew the answer, but I just wanted to get it in writing. I said, are there any companies named in this article connected to Dan Gertler at any point in his history? And then I linked the article. And ChatGPT comes back and says, yes, at least one company named in that article is connected to Dan Gertler's history in the Democratic Republic of Congo mining sector, specifically Glencore. Glencore is the major, and then it goes on to expand. It says Glencore is the major multinational miner mentioned in the article because it owns the Mutanda Mining and Komodo Copper Company, assets that the U.S.-backed consortium is seeking to buy or take a stake in. Historically, Glencore had significant business dealings with Dan Gertler for more than a decade. In the 2000s and 2010s, Gertler acted as an intermediary in helping Glencore secure mining rights and stakes in Congolese copper and cobalt projects, including Mutanda and Komodo, often through offshore firms he controlled. In 2017, Glencore bought out Gertler's direct stakes in the Mutanda mine and other assets for hundreds of millions of dollars, effectively ending his direct ownership, but leaving legacy royalty arrangements linked to him. Even after that, some royalty rights from Mutanda and KCC have continued to be paid to vehicles linked to Gertler, which has complicated these assets during sanctions and sales talks. So again, Glencore gives. Let's back up. Dan Gertler gets into DR Congo through his father. His father and grandfather are mining moguls out of Israel. His grandfather, of course, established the Israeli Diamond Exchange, the largest diamond exchange in the world. And they operate basically as like the diamond cartel in Africa. Sierra Leone, that movie Blood Diamond, that was all them. So he has a cousin, I think, who actually is the formal head of the Israeli diamond cartel. He seems more of like kind of the skeezy black sheep of the family, from what I can gather. That's just kind of speculation, but obviously still has access, still has contacts, all of that. And he basically goes about making this relationship with Joseph Kabila, who we've talked about before, the president of DR Congo for 18 years. bribes him to the tune of whatever, $360 million, gets all of these exclusive mineral rights all across the Eastern DR Congo, and then gets into some trouble in 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis hits. He's facing insolvency, and he turns to Glencore and he says, Glencore, I need help. And so Glencore looks at it and says, yeah, we'll give you $45 million for, ownership stake, significant ownership stake in your companies. He agrees. So then him and Glencore are partners. And then from there, he goes out and helps Glencore recruit more, brokering more deals, helping Glencore to suck up more companies, more mining companies across the Congo. And two of those companies are Mutanda and Komodo. And for those who have been following my work for years now, I've been talking about Dan Gertler and Glencore and the DR Congo and rare earth minerals. Katanga Mining is really the biggest company that sticks out during this whole scandal, because they are using child slaves. All of them are using child slaves. They're accused of human trafficking. But as a result of all of that, when President Trump signs Executive Order 13818, which is the famous one from December of 2017, number 3 on that list is, of course, Dan Gertler. And Dan Gertler has his assets frozen. But again, Executive Order 13818 does not seize assets, it freezes assets. There's a big difference. And so then there are a number of court cases that unfold over the many years since then, that most of them kind of come to a head during Biden's administration, 2022, 2023, 2024. Most of them arbitrated in litigated in British courts. Some of them are litigated in U.S. courts, but a lot of them are litigated in British courts. A lot of them are litigated in European jurisdictions. However, the Biden DOJ, I think this is a devolution proof, is participating in these litigations. They're participating in the prosecutions when those are relevant. They're participating in, it's not really prosecutions because it's like corporate, it's like civil, it's cases being brought against corporate entities where no one's going to jail, but they are being penalized billions of dollars that have to be paid out in damages. And the Biden DOJ is helping to do that. And so this is, of course, what I'm referring to. My map's gotten so big that I can't even recognize it anymore. But yeah, these stories right here. So this guy who I've probably talked about this guy more than any other person, single individual aside from Trump. I've probably talked about him. I mean, maybe Netanyahu, but I've talked about this guy as much as anybody else. As any other random figure out there, Dan Gertler has been on my radar as much as anybody. And so when I hear mining operations in DR Congo, he's the first person I think of. When I hear Glencore, he's the first person I think of. When I hear rare earth minerals, he's the first person I think of. And here we have actual proof, in my opinion, of Executive Order 13818 coming full circle. Because when I say full circle, I don't mean, what I mean is that his assets were frozen. Lawsuits were brought. Here are the lawsuits explaining how a lot of that, but like a lot of these companies are a lot of that's being litigated. The assets are stripped away, and then the assets are sold off. And they're purchased not just by, I mean, in the past, like in the past couple of years, we've gotten evidence of like the Arabs purchasing the assets. Like that's what these articles are about. We have China, but China was already in there. China was in there operating even before Gertler got sanctioned. But now we have a U.S., not just a U.S. company, but a U.S. consortium that is backed by Trump, that Trump helped put into place after he signs a peace deal that still hasn't really been fully enforced. That's going to require, I think, more aggressive nurturing, because again, we're talking about $24 trillion in wealth here. So that's, the mob's not just going to give up their life savings, and their future that easily. So I expect that there's going to be coup attempts, there's going to be violence, there's going to be attempts to stop this at all costs. But again, this is like the very first thing I put on this mind map was what's on the screen right now. These are the first couple articles, images that I put on the mind map, and everything has grown out from there. And so this is obviously a really important story for me to be following, and to see it all come full circle is pretty cool. I don't think it's done yet. I think we're just kind of now breaking into the exciting part, because now we can really see the light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, I think it is fulfilling to see this. It's a good. It's not about like affirmation. I'm saying this is a sign to me that the golden age is coming, because it's not just the Arabs that are owning these rare earth minerals and then selling them to us. This is a U.S. company working directly with Trump, who's going to own the rare earth minerals, and they're going to mine them and bring them back to America. And that is important. Like we need to have a seat at the table. We need to have a hand on the wheel. We can't just be totally dependent on China or the Arabs or whoever to be doing this stuff. And by the way, Glencore, I don't think Glencore is giving up 40% stake of their ownership in these mining companies unless their arm is being twisted. Because who would give up at this point in the game, when these minerals are becoming more and more important every year to high-tech manufacturing, just manufacturing in general? Who's giving that up? Who's giving up 40% stake for any price? Because at that point, it's not even just about money. It's about power. If you control the resources, you control the world. Why would a company that is a commodity asset trading company give that up willingly? I think it has to do with the prosecutions. I think it has to do with the sanctions. I think it has to do with the game theory that's been run against Glencore, and it's been run against other companies like Glencore, where the floodgates are opened, and now we're getting bilateral trade deals. We're getting real energy deals. We're getting real memorandums of understanding that I think are extremely, extremely promising. So where I want to land it today is, oh, and by the way, like, it's worth like reminding everybody, remember what this guy said, that we covered this like a week ago, I think, on the show. Congo rebel chief slams U.S. minerals deal. Remember that? The M23 guy calling Trump a criminal, said Trump is a criminal for doing this. He's violating the Congolese constitution, right? This guy's working for Israel, by the way, 100%. This guy is, in my opinion, is probably Nanga. I think Nanga is probably working for Israel. And then the other story that I thought was really funny, because last Friday, I think we spent time on Africa, if I recall correctly. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking about, this story, remember? Let me pull this up. France was being accused by the Alliance of Sahel States of that attack. There was an attack at the airport in Niger, right? And the mercenaries who did it, the accusation was that Emmanuel Macron had hired them, or France had hired them to go in there and do this, right? Well, a few days after this accusation was made, we then get this story. ISIS came out and claimed that they were the ones who did it. They're like, oh, no, it wasn't France. It was us. It was ISIS. ISIS, your old buddies, ISIS. We are the guys who came in there and attacked that airport. This is February 2nd. It says the surprise and coordinated assault inflicted significant damage, the group reportedly said in a statement. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a deadly attack on Niger's main international airport and its capital. An intelligence group that monitors the activities of jihadist organizations has reported, citing a statement. Diori Hamani International Airport, which hosts Airbase 101, was attacked late Wednesday before calm returned early Thursday morning. Niger's defense ministry said gunmen on motorcycles opened fire on the Air Force base for about 30 minutes before they were repelled by security forces. The ministry said 20 militants were killed in the gunfire and 11 others arrested. 4 Nigerian soldiers were injured, while military facilities and civilian aircraft on the tarmac were damaged, according to authorities. So, I mean, look, I'm totally I'm off in left field speculating right now, but why not? It's 4:00 Friday afternoon and it's snowing like hell. I think the plan potentially was these guys come in, they take control of the airbase, right? They get control of the airbase, and then they let whoever other mercenaries fly planes in there and land, and suddenly you have a beachhead, an air bridge in the middle of Niger, their biggest airport, and then you can suddenly start an insurgency operation against their military junta that can then be built out, and you can retake control of the country, recolonize Niger. That's a lot of ifs there, and that's all speculation. But, you know, I'd have to consult a military strategist on whether or not that's actually a real thing, but seems like that might have been what their plan was. So anyway, we're going to land it there. Everyone, please hit the thumbs up. I'm going to hit any rants that we have, any questions, any boosts. Let me check out. If you're listening to this on replay, go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost, or you just go to Badlands. You click on the boost at the top of the page, and you can basically leave a Rumble rant anytime. We might be caught up. Yeah, it looks like we're probably caught up. Yeah, it looks like we're good. So, all right, guys, we'll hit the thumbs up, and everyone have a good weekend. And we will... I'm just stalling so I can get the music ready. We will see y'all on Tuesday, and y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.